heart throbs on as warmly now as when the summer days were nigh. The sun can never dip so low down the affection's cloudless sky. The sun can never dip so low down the affection's cloudless sky.
Hello, I'm Uncle Jimmy, and welcome to Jimmy's Travel Adventures. Today we will be going out onto the battlefield of Gettysburg once again, and this time we're going to do the tragic story of Jenny Wade and her childhood friends Wesley Kopp and Jack Skelly. So learn the tragic story of Miss Jenny Wade and her childhood friends as we do a history on Jenny Wade of Gettysburg. Hello once again, and I'm Uncle Jimmy with Jimmy's Travel Channel. Today we're telling the story of Jenny Wade, and we are at our first stop. I have my daughter with me today on this adventure, and she is now holding a picture of Jenny Wade. This will be the tragic story of Jenny Wade. We are standing at our first stop, which is 242 Baltimore Street here in Gettysburg. We are standing in front of the house in which Jenny Wade was born, May 21st of 1843. Now, this is where she was born to James and Mary Philby Wade. She also had an older sister, Georgia, and two younger brothers, which was born in this house. So I'll let you see the house we're standing in front of. It is now a museum of haunted objects. Gettysburg has become not only history, but a lot of ghost tales. So from here, we're going to move to our second location, where Jenny and her mother and two brothers lived. Now her father, James Wade, was in jail a lot and was never around to help the family much. Also, he ended up being in a mental institution from a nervous breakdown. So he was never around to help the family. So now we will move on to our second stop. We're now at our second location on Breckenridge Street here in Gettysburg. Now this blue house across the street is actually the house that Jenny, her mother, and two younger siblings lived in during the Battle of Gettysburg. Now when the battle broke out on July 1st, 1863, the family would be going to her sister's house, but actually arriving on the 1st because her sister has just given birth to a new baby. So Jenny, her mother, and two brothers went to her house to take care of her sister. Now our third stop and next stop will be the historic Farnsworth House Inn, where this tragic story begins. Hi, we are now standing at our third location in front of the historic Farnsworth House Inn. Now this is where the tragic story of Jenny Wade begins. At the time of the battle on July 1st of 1863, this house was empty because the owner had died and the bank owned the house at the time. So it was all boarded up and no one living here at the time of the battle. But on the first day's battle from this location, the Confederate Army came through town pushing the Union Corps up to Cemetery Hill, which is in that direction. They occupied this house, including Mr. G's ice cream across the street. They were using these homes as a sharpshooter's nest to shoot at the soldiers up on Cemetery Hill. Now they say that this house here is where the tragic story begins, that a stray bullet from the attic window went up to the house, which we're going to stop at next, which was Jenny Wade's sister's house, George McLean. Now,
Daddy, the Camera turned off.
Georgia lived in the house up the street where they went.
Camera turned
Now
off.
we're going to go over to the side here of the house. Now if you notice, up the house, you will see bunches of bullet holes. There's over 150 bullet holes in the side of this house from the Battle of Gettysburg, including one right here. Everywhere it's painted white is a bullet hole. Here, 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 all over the house is riddled with bullet holes. Now at the very top, there's an attic window. We'll go out here on the street so you can see it better. And if we look up at the attic window there on the side of the house, that is where the stray bullet came that killed Jenny Wade. So they say. So we're going to our next stop, which is the Jenny Wade house, as it's known, which was her sister George's house at the time of the battle, and we'll tell a story there. Hi, we are now standing in front of our next location, which is known as the Jenny Wade house on 548 Baltimore Street. This is a statue of Jenny Wade with bread and water in her hand. The reason there's bread and water in her hand is there's a story to tell. Now at this house, Jenny, her mother, and two brothers came to do aid to her sister Georgia, who had just given birth to a new baby. So that's why they were here during the Battle of Gettysburg. They took refuge in this house on July 1st through the 3rd. Now on the morning of the 3rd would be when Jenny Wade would die. We're going to go to the side of the house and continue the story, so please follow me. We are now standing on the north side of the house, the side of which the bullet came that killed Jenny Wade. If you notice, there's all kinds of bullet holes in the side of the house, all over. There's over 150 bullet holes altogether. Now, what Jenny Wade was doing was on July 3rd, the morning of July 3rd, she was killed at approximately 8 a.m. Right before this, in this window, was a bedroom. She had just got up, had herself some breakfast, was sitting on the bed, and reading passages from the Bible. Those passages were from Psalms 27 and 30. Now, what the passage reads is, "The Lord is my life and salvation. Whom shall I fear?" Her sister wasn't too happy with this and told her to stop reading them passages because it was giving her fear with the battle going on. But Jenny then went to the kitchen, to the dough box, and started making and rolling bread. They were feeding the soldiers outside this house, the Union Army. She was giving them bread and water during the battle. Now this door right here, this bullet hole right here, and this door is the fatal bullet hole that the bullet passed through the other door, which separates the bedroom from the kitchen, pierced Jenny Wade's left shoulder blade, piercing her heart, going through her heart through the front, and the bullet lodging in the corset of her dress. She fell instantly dead on the kitchen floor. She was only 20 years old. Now the story don't end here. With this bullet hole, there's a little story and urban legend that goes behind this bullet hole. A young woman who is not wed yet, who would like to be married, the legend goes, if they take their left ring finger and stick it through the hole which the bullet passed, they will be asked to be married to within that year. Now, whether it's true or not, there's rumor that it is very true. We don't know. And I will not allow my daughter, who's with me, to do that because she is way too young. So, from here, we will continue on to our next stop. But before that, after she was killed, she was taken through the upstairs by the Union soldiers. A mortar had came through the upstairs roof and crashed a hole in the wall. So fearing that others would be killed, the soldiers carried her body upstairs, busted through that hole to the other side of the house, because this house was divided by two families who lived here. Georgia McClellan was living on this side, which was her sister. On the other side, it was McCain's, or McClellan's, I'm sorry. And the body was taken to the basement. Now, after the battle, they had to do a haste funeral and burial of Jenny, because the battle was still going on and they didn't know if the soldiers was going to come back. Now, she was buried in a coffin that was made for General Bardsdale, which was of the Confederate Alabama unit. But the soldiers had moved on and left the casket. So the casket was used to bury Jenny, which she was buried behind this house here, in this location, which was the Rose Garden. Now, she would be buried here until November of 1865, where she would be buried in her third and final location. But before that, she was buried here until January of 1864. Now, I'm going to take you to the next location, which is the burial site of her second location. So follow me. We're now standing in front of our next location. This is the Trinity United Church of Christ. At the time during the Battle of Gettysburg, it was known as the German Reformed Church. Now, this is the second location that Jenny Wade's body would be buried, almost a year later. Now, Jenny, when she was buried, she was not embalmed. I do know this for sure. Now, I'm going to show you where that cemetery, well, my daughter is going to show you where that cemetery was located. So I will let her do that now. She is pointing in this direction, where it's now a White House and another White House behind it. That is the location where the cemetery was. So these houses are built up on what used to be the German Reformed Cemetery. Now, for reasons which I don't know, evidently the cemetery was moved, and the bodies, most of the bodies, was taken to Evergreen Cemetery, which is the third and final resting spot of Jenny Wade, which will be our next location. So follow us as we continue on to our next location in this tragic story of Jenny Wade. We are at our next location. I wanted to stop here before we moved on to Jenny Wade's final resting spot, because this has a lot to do with the tragic story, and this is a very interesting story that goes along with Jenny Wade. Off in the distance, we are standing in front of the Wesley Kopp farmhouse. Now, this was the farmhouse of his parents. Wesley Kopp was a childhood friend of Jenny Wade, and along with them was Jack Skelly. These three were childhood friends. Now, the story goes, so this is Jack, or Wesley Kopp here, right here. He was the son of the farmer that owned this house. There's Jenny, and there is Jack Skelly. The reason we're showing you these three together is, like I said, they were all childhood friends. Now, the tragic story goes that Mr. Skelly was wounded in a battle near what is now Winchester, Virginia. Now, what happened is, this was 2 weeks prior of Jenny's death. He was captured by Confederates, wounded, and was in a field hospital when his friend, Wesley Kopp, who was a member, I might say, of the Stonewall Brigade. Yes, Wesley Kopp, living in a northern state, in Gettysburg, went off to Virginia and joined the Confederate Army. While Mr. Jack Skelly, their other friend, joined a local Pennsylvania unit. Now, when Jack was wounded and at the field hospital, his friend Wesley came to visit him. Jack Skelly was no other than Jenny Wade's fiance and childhood friend. Now, Jack had given Wesley a few letters to deliver to Jenny Wade when he was in his hometown in this area again, because Jack knew that he would probably succumb from his wounds. Now, the tragic story goes, Jack did give these letters to Wesley, and Wesley did promise Jack that he would deliver them to Jenny when he could. Now, just so happens, at the time of the battle on the 2nd of July, in this direction, on Wesley's uncle's land, which is known as Copp's Hill, in this general area, or on Copp's Hill, we're not sure, it is said that Wesley Copp was killed. Now, we know where Jenny's buried. We know where Jack's buried. They are both in Evergreen Cemetery, which I will take you there. This is the reason Jenny was moved from this cemetery, the last spot, to the new one where Jack is buried, because they wanted her to be close to her fiance's grave, which is just a couple hundred yards away from each other. Now, it's really sad for Wesley because we really don't know where Wesley Copp is buried. Rumor has it that he may be buried in the basement of this farmhouse. His body might have been recovered by his family members on the night of the 2nd between the battle of July 3rd. The other rumor is the body was taken to Evergreen Cemetery and buried in the family plot. And then there's a third story, that Wesley is still somewhere buried out here on the battlefield near or on Copp's Hill. Very sad. Now, tragic story, but interesting. They call that the love triangle of Gettysburg is what they call this. So our next and final stop will be Evergreen Cemetery to visit Jenny Wade's grave and her fiance and childhood friend, Jack Skelly. So follow us as we continue on with this tragic story of Jenny Wade. Well, hello, folks. We are our very last stop on this tragic story. I am standing here beside the grave of Jenny Wade. This is the third and final resting spot that Jenny Wade was buried. She was moved from two other locations to here. Not far from this location is her fiance's grave, Jack Skelly, who was killed there in Virginia, the battle in Virginia, where he was killed. His body was moved here. This is also the general location right here of where Abraham Lincoln gave his famous Gettysburg Address. In this area right here, where these tombstones are, was where the scaffolding was that Abraham Lincoln stood on. A lot of people think it was done over in the next cemetery, which is the National Cemetery of all the soldiers that's buried over there who died in this battle. But in reality, it was in this area near Jenny Wade's grave. Now, Jenny was buried here exactly 2 years after Abraham Lincoln did the famous Gettysburg Address. Now, this monument here, the statue, was designed by no other than a Gettysburg resident named Anna M. Miller. Now, Jenny was moved here in November of 1865 and buried here, and this statue of Jenny was presented on her grave. Now, if you notice, there's a flag right here beside it. It's flying 24 hours, 7 days a week. The interesting fact is there is only 2 women in America who have this honor. One being Miss Jenny Wade, and the other being no other than Betsy Ross, the creator of our American flag. Interesting story. Now we will move over to Jack Skelly's grave. We are now standing in front of our last stop, and this is Jack Skelly's grave, which was the fiance of Jenny Wade. People leave money and little gifts, as you can see on his grave, and we won't disturb that. The plaque in front reads GAR 1861 to 1865. Our beloved son, Johnson H., son of J.H. and E.A. Skelly, a member of Company F, 87 Pennsylvania Infantry Volunteer, wounded and taken prisoner at the Battle of Carter's Woods, June 16, 1863, and died at Winchester, Virginia, July 12, 1863. Age 22 years old. My country needs me, mother, may I go. Dedicated Gettysburg Camp, number 112, Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, 2003, GAR post number 9. So this is his grave. And not far from his grave, just a couple hundred yards, the flag off in the distance, this is his fiance, Jenny Virginia Wade. That is the end of the story. I hope you've enjoyed our little blog on the Jenny Wade story of Gettysburg. So, please subscribe to my channel. Please feel free to leave comments. Hit the like button and the notification bell to let you know when we put another video on. So thank you for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed this story of Jenny Wade. And stay tuned for many more interesting stories and roadside attractions on Jimmy's Travel Channels. Thank you. Until next time, enjoy your own adventures.